Alright, I just want to start off and say that these creatures are absolutely insane, so buckle in. Horseshoe crabs are incredible creatures. As much as their name suggests, horseshoe crabs aren't actually crabs. They're imposters. Keep that in mind as we move forward. Not crabs. Horseshoe crabs are part of the phylum Arthropoda. If you're thinking bugs, then you're pinning the tail right on the donkey. This phylum includes species that have chitinous exoskeletons and jointed appendages. Horseshoe crabs are also very closely related to arachnids, dudes in the subphylum Chelicerata, which the horseshoe crab also shares. For reference, horseshoe crabs are also referred to as xiphosurans. Overall, there are 4 species of horseshoe crabs that are alive today. There's the Limulus polyphemus, Tachypleus tridentatus, Tachypleus gigas, and Corsinus scorpius rotundicata. That is, the Atlantic, trispine, coastal, and mangrove horseshoe species, respectively. They have a relatively simple body plan, with an anterior cephalothorax, posterior abdomen, and a telson, which is essentially a tail-like structure. They have 2 lateral compound eyes and 2 median eyes that are used for UV light. Now, stay with me for this next segment of information because it'll be a lot. The animal doesn't have antennae, but they do have adapted feeding appendages called chelicerae. These mini arms are really good for grabbing food, and basically are the equivalent of giving a toddler one of those grabby toy things from Dollar Tree. They sift through the substrate looking for worms, crabs, mollusks, and so on. They are more so opportunistic feeders, so the style of foraging kind of works for them. Behind those, they have 5 pairs of legs for walking and digging. Each of these has multiple segments. Most notably, the base segments are lined with gnathobases, or spiny protrusions, that are used for tearing up and moving their food. I kind of think of it as a conveyor belt. I don't know. It works for me. Working from the anterior end of the animal, the first 4 pairs of legs end in paired claws called chelate. The last of these legs end in single claws and have 4 digging structures that resemble leaves. Horseshoe crabs may seem to be all legs ventrally, but we can't forget about the book gills. Each individual has 5 pairs of book gills. These are pretty self-explanatory. They are used for respiration and swimming. Horseshoe crabs can also get to be absolutely massive, at 34 inches from their anterior end to the tip of their telson. In terms of where you can find them, it really depends on the stage of life they're in. Their life cycle, and the stage that an individual is in, is pretty much indicative of when and where you'll find them. Much like angsty teenagers trying to find themselves, horseshoe crabs can never really decide what they want at any given point for more than a couple months. For all of its life, however, it will stay on the continental shelf and not go under the substrate. Safe to say, it's not entirely keen on deep diving. One surefire way of seeing a horseshoe crab in the wild is during the spring and summer months. This is their mating season. During their mating season, they come up onto the beaches in swarms. Female horseshoe crabs create multiple recessions into the substrate, which is typically finer sand, and lay clutches of several thousand eggs. These will be right below high tide, so they never actually pass the littoral zone. Once the eggs have been laid, one or multiple males will go over and cover the eggs in sperm. This is probably one of the most simple things about horseshoe crabs. Horseshoe crabs are known as living fossils. The oldest actual fossils of horseshoe crabs date to the Ordovician period, 480 million years ago, and remarkably, extant species remain relatively unchanged morphologically since this extremely ancient date. So to put it in perspective, horseshoe crabs predate all mammalians that would lead to human life, dinosaurs, sharks, and any true land-dwelling animal. This is key to understanding the horseshoe crab. While the horseshoe crab is scientifically interesting for many reasons, one of the most noted is the idea of evolutionary stasis. This is an idea that I'll get into a lot more later, but to put it simply, this just means that their general phenotype hasn't changed even after all of this time. Interestingly, the only identifiable difference between a late Jurassic specimen and a current specimen is that our current specimens typically have a slightly larger carapace. While they outwardly have shown almost no development, their DNA speaks volumes in contrast. While their general genotype has maintained, they exhibit extensive evidence towards higher diversity. Their DNA is more in line with species that have had a rapid evolutionary history, whereas other living fossils are quite the opposite. Considering horseshoe crabs exhibit little to no phenotypic diversity, this came as quite a shock to the scientific community. Now, in terms of their environment and habitat, they're comparable to Australia's forests. They are not doing good. Quite the opposite, actually. They're on fire! Underwater. Essentially, overharvesting and human-engineered coastal stabilization, on top of regular predation, have been wiping out their populations. This has led to their vulnerable status. Specifically, the trispine species has been fully defined as endangered. Horseshoe crabs have once been used worldwide as fertilizer, but now they're only used as fertilizer in Asia, with the rise of synthetic fertilizers in America. They're also used a lot in medicine. Here's a simple breakdown, or at least as simple as I can make it. Limulus amoebocyte lysate, or LAL, and the Asian equivalent Tachypleus amoebocyte lysate, or TAL, are found in horseshoe crab blood. Okay, so why should we care? These have been used in the biomedical industry for detecting and quantifying bacterial endotoxins. They essentially have a really cool property of finding bacteria, completely surrounding it, and protecting the rest of the cells in the system. The industry used to use a capture, kill, and drain system, but now in America we have a capture and release system. Overall, this is not a Krispy Kreme extravaganza situation. Horseshoe crabs have been seeing a severe decrease in their population sizes, and like any other species, this is severely impacting the ecosystem around them. As the imbalance persists, red knots, migrating birds that frequent horseshoe crab mating grounds, have seen a dramatic increase in the competition that they have for their food. This has led to a decrease in their population as well. This is a similar quandary to any other human-caused imbalance in an ecosystem. Not good. Okay, I'm done with the doom and gloom of conservation and all that jazz. I want to talk about stuff that I find to be really neat about horseshoe crabs. And the way that I kind of want to structure this is the most scientific to the silliest. So, I'm gonna. Quick fact time. To start off, they were one of the species that originally inspired the term stapelomorphism. The idea that horseshoe crabs were living fossils and experiencing evolutionary stasis was widely accepted. However, this is just multiple words thrown together to describe a symptom. This is not nearly as cool as having a definitive word for a specific thing. Hence, stapelomorphism. As we talked about before with living fossils, stapelomorphism follows a similar outline. Relative morphological stability of organisms in time and spatial distribution, the taxonomic status of which does not exceed genus level. This also characterizes that a qualifying attribute is that the species must have survived through at least one mass extinction. For reference, the horseshoe crab has survived 5. This really just means the same thing as living fossils, slow evolution, but I think it's really cool that an entirely new word was created just because of this. Moving on. We actually have no evidence that horseshoe crabs were alive during the Silurian. The Silurian is right after the Ordovician. Logically, they must have been around, but the fossil record has no evidence that they were actually there. I don't know, I just thought that was cool. Fact 3. It was originally thought that Synsophoscerans were the early horseshoe crabs. This was widely believed, until further research and discovery found Lunataspis. This is the oldest Xyphossuran that we know of today. So why should it rule out Synsophoscerans as being the earliest horseshoe crabs? Very good question. Because Lunataspis first showed up in the fossil record about 480 million years ago. This predates all Synsophosceran fossils that we currently have. This royally upset the understanding of paleontological order. Thanks, Lunataspis. Alright, so horseshoe crabs actually have insanely good eyesight. They have 9 total eyes. Their primary eyes are lateral compound eyes, and the rest of them are used for UV light, motion detection, and changes in their surroundings. They also have photoreceptors on their telson. Alright, the moment we've all been waiting for. The magnum opus of fun facts about horseshoe crabs. They can swim upside down. That's it. They can swim upside down if they so please. And I am personally very pleased with this. Stay curious. See you.